Welcome to Booming Your Bottom Line. With over 76 million boomers in the U.S. and 10,000 of them turning 65 every day, these older consumers will reach almost 20% of the U.S. population by the year 2030. The truth is, cities across the nation are not ready for this event. Communities simply don't have the structure in place to support the aging boomers. There are not enough medical facilities, doctors, assisted living communities, home care companies, transportation or delivery services, home maintenance, you name it, there's not enough. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to answer the call, be a part of the solution, and profit from it? If so, you're going to have to learn how to reach them, how to talk to them, and how to structure your business so it better meets their needs. I'm Mark Hager, and along with my co-host Aaron Murphy, we're here to help you do just that. Let's get to this week's topic. Hi, and welcome to episode 30 of Booming Your Bottom Line. I'm Mark Hager, and with me is my co-host Aaron Murphy. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
Great. Now, we've got a great show for you all this week. It's about a fantastic way to get long-term value for your business. And when I say value, I mean name recognition, branding, subsequent referrals, and more boomer customers. This is something that can build you and your company's reputation so much, and it can pull in referrals from people that you don't even know. And today we're talking about 5 steps that is going to allow you to speak your way to local expert status. Now, if you just groaned a little bit because you don't even want to think about public speaking, just take a deep breath and listen anyways. This is a proven way to get business you might never otherwise see, and a great way to get more local media attention. And did I mention referrals? And we're going to hear this from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Aaron has done this and is going to tell you exactly how you can make it happen for you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm excited to talk about this subject matter today. It's a passion of mine, and it's a great opportunity for small business owners. I mean, it's a pretty untapped way that you can educate the public, become a trusted advisor along the way, and increase your revenues as a result, and new leads and new clients. So take advantage of this, listen in, wrap your head around it. I think it could really pay off for those that take advantage.
Right. Now, so I know this story, and clearly you've done a lot of work in this area. I want to make sure that our listeners get the chance to hear just how you've done what you've done to boom your own business by capturing more of the boomer consumer market. So to get us started, what can you tell us about what you've done to reach the point you have with your own business?
Okay. Well, we did talk about this kind of at an introductory level in episode 8. Last Friday, I put a few posts up in social media saying, hey, check that one out first. But in case you didn't, a quick recap. I've been speaking on stages pretty much for 5 years on a monthly basis because I'm passionate about the subject of successful aging in place for boomers and their parents, their family, their caregivers. I speak about once a month. Usually it's local, pretty local, to a Rotary or Lions Club or some other civic organization. But I've done it, regionally, nationally, financial planners conferences, area agencies on aging, Chamber of Commerce. If I can get the mic and the stage, I'll take it because I care. The authenticity shows when I'm on stage that I like educating the public. From a business perspective, I've seen a significant increase due to the public recognition. It's turned in inbound phone calls and referrals from contractors to ADM architecture. So my residential design work has increased about 35% in the areas of accessibility or creating new construction forever homes or ADA consulting, etc. And that, as gross revenues from a fee structure perspective, that's, 50 to 80 grand a year in additional gross revenues every year since, over the last 3 years.
Wow. That's a pretty major increase in your business.
Yeah.
I mean, and some significant benefits for, your family and your community because you're out there educating people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's allowed me to grow my firm a little bit and also to give back, to give back in my own Rotary Club where I'm a member. In fact, just over this past weekend, I was able to write a check for $500 to start a $70,000 fundraising campaign for a youth center for the street kids in Gondar, Ethiopia. A fellow Rotarian and a friend of mine is taking on that project, and I gave her about 20 hours of my free time to, create a floor plan and a 3D model that she can use in her fundraising literature. So it feels great to get those kind of results. And to me, again, it's the chance to give back.
Right, and that's awesome project. I mean, I just love to see people doing stuff like that in underdeveloped areas. So how do you know exactly what to talk about? Because now we're talking about the who, the audience. Clearly, what you're saying to people when you're talking is resonating with them, and it's because it's resulting in clients and referrals. But how do you know exactly what to talk about? Where do you get started?
Okay. Yeah, good question. First of all, you have to spend some time doing your research, of course. First on your subject matter, and then from speech to speech, also who's your audience? Who are you going to be in front of? Mm-hmm. You need to understand that potential client as an audience, even though you're not selling, you're just educating. You need to understand their needs, wants, dreams, and fears, okay? Pain points, understanding pain points is a critical piece of getting their attention, holding it, and keeping an audience engaged.
Right.
You want them to walk away wanting to know more because you resonated with them, because you can't cover it all in 20 to 35 minutes on stage. It's just like we do, B2B coaching for an individual CEO or group coaching with staffs, because we can't share every detail about our best practices and our scripts and systems in a 15-minute podcast either.
Absolutely. That's a perfectly valid point. Now, understanding you've done this quite a bit, and you kind of make it sound really easy. and having done some myself, I know that once you get going, it's really not that big of a deal, but starting's hard sometimes. So What about the first timer who's unsure about where to begin, or maybe even deathly afraid of speaking in public? What would you tell our listeners about where they can get started on their first speech or presentation?
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Currently, the most user-friendly format most people use is PowerPoint to create what's called a slide deck. That's what's up on the screen when you're talking. I usually do my research by just opening the internet and a separate Word document, and spending 2 or 3 hours researching my subject matter. So let's say it's remodeling your bathroom for better accessibility, or how boomer consumers think, feel, and buy. Okay, something like that. Those are both subjects I've got speeches on file for, because I've done that homework. I'd take those, for a 30-minute speech, 2 or 3 hours of homework, collecting text from articles, and cutting and pasting and grabbing some imagery, and you have to give credit to all those sources, mind you, but then you make it your own, okay? And it's kind of like, if anybody's ever learned about blogging, you're talking about something else that you read or saw, but you're giving it, like you said, your spin, okay? It's your opinion of what you're finding and how it applies to your audience, okay? So the goal is that you're referencing the information, but you're an expert because you're providing your professional opinion about your findings and why it matters to your audience, okay? You're not just regurgitating info you found on the internet.
Right.
You're elaborating on the information related to the people you're talking to, okay? And you're giving them direction based on that information, and that's where you become an expert, when all you really were doing is doing a public education speech, right? So there's a pretty succinct description. I know in the interest of time, there's the gist of the matter. I could help anybody, both of us could, separately with, writing a speech, but let's move on.
Okay, so that's really great information, and you're right. This is a much deeper subject at a personal business owner's level, and we can help with that outside of this format. So the next question is, how do you find speaking engagements? I mean, for most people, this has never been on their radar before as a way to gain local exposure, and, even in your case, that's led to national and international opportunities. What about that part? Where would they get started speaking?
Okay. Yeah, so like I said earlier, I think some people are going to find that Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions Club, civic organizations, and philanthropies that meet, weekly or monthly, they have speakers at most of these meetings, and that's a great place to start. I started in rooms of, 12 to 20 people. Now, I want to give some people some insight. I don't want you to make the mistake that I made. I'd rather have you learn from it, okay? Drive 50 miles to give your first three speeches. Okay. I did my very first speech to 100 people in my own Rotary Club. Big mistake. I was told it was fine, but I was so nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I was sweating and pacing and I rushed it and I was really uncomfortable up there. Why? Because I know them.
Yep.
Every person in that room is a local business owner in my town. And, I've been in the club for 5 or 6 years. They're also friends.
Right.
So I really value their opinion and I care what they think of me. Wrong move on my part.
Yeah.
Don't make that mistake. I can give you 3 reasons you should drive 50 miles for your first 3 speeches, okay? Number 1, it's just easier to talk to strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 2, you can walk away, get back in your car, and drive a good distance to get home. So if you flubbed it up, you might probably never see any of them again. So,
Exactly.
and then number 3, and this is kind of the most important one, being a stranger is exactly what makes you an expert. That's just a psychological truth. There's a verse I'll paraphrase from the Bible that says, your fortune's never made in your own land. I mean, Jesus was just a carpenter in his own town. Okay. My idea, my version of that is, once you're, and this has actually happened to me, okay, once your police chief in your own town has seen you change your baby's diaper at a city street fair, you're not an expert anymore.
Yeah.
You just can't be seen that way, okay?
Yeah.
If you hung out at the dog park and someone's watched you pick up your pet poo, you're just not an authority anymore, okay? So you get the idea. It's just psychology.
Oh, yeah, that was a little bit TMI. So let me just try to get that imagery out of my head as quickly as possible. Are there any anecdotal stories that you have that will help our listeners feel a little safer and maybe more relaxed about getting started, this process, and getting past their first speaking engagement? So I know that I have one personally, and I'm going to start there, but just think about that. So here's my story. Once I was giving a talk to about 75 people, and I knew my subject matter very well, and I knew some of the people very well, and I wasn't really that nervous because I don't typically get nervous while I'm doing it. It's just before I get a little nervous, and then once I get started, I'm fine. But I did know some of these people, and I got up there, and I got about 15 minutes into my talk, and somebody stopped me and asked me a question, which is fine. I mean, that had happened 100 times before. It's no big deal. But so I answered their question, and I went back to try to find my place where I had stopped so I could continue. And I'm sitting there, going over my notes, trying to scan and find out where I had left off. But what I didn't realize is that the page that had where I left off was actually lying on the floor at my foot. I had dropped it when I had moved to kind of step out and answer the person's question. So I'm sitting there rifling through things, and the pressure was just crazy. I didn't know what to do, and finally, after having a little freak out for a second, I just took a deep breath and said, admitted I'd lost my place, and then I just kind of took a stab in the dark at where I thought I'd left off, and I just picked up from there, and it was no big deal, and it literally was only a minute or so. It was only a minute. But it felt like hours, and I was just horrified in the moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. But it was really no big deal. I mean, nobody even thought that much about it. I mean, it was a human thing to do, to admit you made a mistake and you just moved on.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can top that. Yeah, I've been in that place. It is uncomfortable to lose your spot.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, for me, my anecdotal story is really in front of my largest audience ever. I was speaking in front of 280 people at a ULI Urban Land Institute conference at the Bremerton Convention Center. In the room were mayors, legislators, city council, real estate agents, builders, developers, etc. I was the 4th speaker at a breakfast event, and I'm friends with the MC. So I said to him on the way out of my seat heading up to the stage, do you mind if I stir things up a bit? It looks like the breakfast coma may be setting in. And he smiled and said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So on the 2 steps up to the platform and the podium, I intentionally tripped and fell. My hands went flying up, the papers and the pens as I, went skyward as I fell behind the podium to the ground. And disappeared, and the women all go, and I was going to make a point about how quickly your folks could fall while you're
Right.
at work today, right? And then suddenly you're quitting your career to become a caretaker because we didn't plan ahead, right?
Right.
But I didn't practice the choreography on this one, and I actually hit my chin on the back of one of the four chairs that were set up for the forum Q&A afterwards. And my head snapped back, and I was clearly dazed. When I gathered myself and stood up at the podium amidst the gasping, I came to realize that I was bleeding from my chin down my tie and shirt and onto the laptop that was at the podium.
Oh my gosh.
It was ugly. I was embarrassed. I managed to make a joke though and get through the presentation, but I guess for the sake of longevity and remembrance, people still bring that up to me today. That was a good 3 years ago.
Okay, well, you're the winner. I'm going to give you that. Okay, so any last tips or insights you have on this subject before we wrap it up today?
Yeah. I think in wrapping up, I just want to remind everybody, after speaking over 100 times from Seattle to Chicago to Tokyo, be yourself, okay? Authenticity rules the stage for engagement, trust, and rapport. That'd be number one. Number two, practice ahead of going live, okay? Make sure you've got your timing and your pacing in check for the amount of content and the amount of time you've been allotted. Try to get within 2 minutes, give or take, either side of your time slot. Otherwise, you're going to end up rushing, and I've been here, okay? Rushing the last 30 or slide presentation, skipping points, and you're going to leave the audience confused, and that doesn't work well for expertise, okay? Number three, pacing does matter. Don't be too slow, but be slow. The tendency is to rush.
Okay, when you say pacing, you mean the pacing of your speech and not walking the podium.
Right, not pacing back and forth, but pacing the way you speak. Thank you. Yeah. Not too slow. Your tendency is going to be to rush. Be slow enough to be clear and let critical points sink in, okay? Yep. Pauses are a part of speaking. They must be a part of your presentation. And then finally, I think, a lot of people are nervous about public speaking. So if you need the practice, consider joining a group where you can do that, okay? Yep. It's critical to your growth as an expert locally, and you can get together with somebody like Toastmasters in your town. You'll get feedback, critiques, and you're going to get better before you go live.
That is great advice. Okay, so I guess we'll stop there for today since we've run over time. Please visit our new website at bybellive.com and share this podcast with a friend or colleague who wants to grow their business by better serving the boomer consumers. If you wouldn't mind, please post on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. This posting episodes really helps us spread the good work and high-value information that we're providing to the public for free so we can help more business owners just like you. And consider contacting us directly for group coaching or one-on-one with your company. Make this your year. Start making changes that will make a real difference in your business and your family and your community. And we would love to help you and be a part of that change for your organization. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you. And until next week, be well, be bold, and boom your bottom line.
Have a great week.